Hello, this is Scott Churchson from the Sports Den, and welcome to Spanglish Sports World on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on both the app stores of iOS and Android. When you download, please make sure to rate, leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. And welcome once again to the Sports Den. My name is Scott Churchson. Alongside me today, as always, is Mr. Obie Spencer, Mr. Rob Stats, and also tuning in and joining in for the first time, Mr. John DeRosa, who is rocking out that beard, man. You basically get two beards here. We got like two rival beards happening right now.
No rivalry here.
Much respect.
There. Exactly. So, Rob, much like the rest of us, John DeRosa does also hail from planet Earth. He is also, at this point, he was formerly with SOU, Pirate Radio 89.5. That's sort of how I started to get to know you a little bit that way. Today, we will be discussing in detail the NFL draft. John is a suffering Jets fan. I'm a suffering Giants fan. There will be a lot of suffering, I'm sure, in this conversation in general. We will also be covering as well Shut Up and Shout Out and Sport and Shut Up this week, and also our obscure sport, which is Finnish Baseball, which I'm really excited about. But for starting this off, gents, how are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Groovy.
It's draft week, and I'm excited. Love draft week. Love it.
So yeah, we're going to do a lot into that. Rob, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. Just enjoying the beautiful weather here in New Jersey.
Exactly. Yeah, Jersey weather. I know it's great. So,
Jersey.
John, as you're drinking out of your, also suffering Devil's glass there. I believe losers of 14 out of this last 15, I believe, is the number at this point.
Suffering to go around in the New Jersey and New York sports world.
Oh, my, yes. So we'll get into that shortly. But first, like I said, I want to start off with, we're doing it out of order in this case. I want to start off with our shout out and our shut up of the week. I've got a couple. I know you guys have them as well. I guess in this case, John, let's start it off with you. What do you say? You said you already had a couple, right?
Yes, I have a shout out to the to the fan groups and the groundswell of support in the British soccer football, as they call it, community. That in a matter of a few days managed to ruin a bunch of billionaire owners' plans. And that's phenomenal to me, just how quickly that fell apart. And the fan pressure, the government pressure, it even got to a point where Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, was talking about sanctions against British clubs that seceded to join this league. Mm-hmm. So shout out for the fans and the outcry to make that happen, and a shut up to the owners for this blatant cash grab that everybody knew was. It was all about just trying to keep a slice of the pie for themselves that they already get the majority of without risk of getting relegated, which is what makes European football so great, is the fact that everybody has a chance. Mm-hmm. So my shut up is to those owners, and oddly enough, a lot of them are mostly the same American sports owners. Mm-hmm. John Henry, the owner of the Red Sox, is the owner of Liverpool. Then you have the Glazers, of the Tampa Bay Bucks, who own Manchester United. Mm-hmm. So they were the big culprits behind this, and Stan Kroenke, who owns several teams across multiple sports, also owns Arsenal. They were the big catalysts behind this. So, to his credit, John Henry attempted a apology, but everybody sees through it. To his credit, he actually stood up and said, "Yes, we screwed up, but shut up for even trying." Something like
Nice, love it. Obie, how about you, man?
My shout out definitely goes to one Trevor Bauer for his comments about Tatis, mocking him with the covering the eye after his home run there. Something to the effect of, I like it. If you can't take it, you're not a man. You're in this sport, so it's a home run. Deal with it. So he gets my shout out, and I think the whole bickering back and forth between the two of them is fantastic. I'm waiting for Pedro to throw an old man on the ground when he charges out of the dugout for those Yankee Red Sox days. It's going to happen out west. I mean, it's wonderful that when you have two teams like that and they're going to go at each other 20 times and they're showing distaste, I'm in. I like it. Give me more of that. I don't really have a shutout. It's funny because, we played that Scott's the super nice guy, but I'm the one who always has trouble having shutouts. But maybe to Knicks fans for getting angry that they lost to the Suns. You're a 4 or 5 seed. Live with that. But, even then, you're feeling good about yourselves, Knicks fans. So I can't even be too angry at them.
All right, fair. Rob, how about you before we finish up?
My shut up goes to all the alleged NFL draft experts who are on like mock draft 12.0 at this point. Like, if you were such an expert, why do you need more than basically 3 mock drafts to do a prediction? Like, you're not an expert. You're literally throwing darts with a blindfold on at this point. So that's my shut up. My shout out goes to Daniel Cormier, who I swear he must be the person who watches this show, because he stepped up to Jake Paul and was like, yo, get in the cage and I'll wreck your face. And like we said, Jake Paul, like right after we did the show last week, he calls out Cormier. And what we talked about on the show, he's got this format, goes after MMA fighters who aren't boxers, who are older, who are shorter. He's basically become kind of a bully. Like, he picks the people he thinks he can beat up on. And like I talked about with the Conor fight, Cormier's like, no, you want to fight me? Get in the cage. Come to my world and see what happens when you fight a real man, without any limitations. And I doubt he's going to fight. I don't think Jake Paul's going to fight him for that reason. He's not going to get in the cage and he's not going to get his ass whooped. So it's that simple. But shout out to him for stepping up and literally like getting in his face at UFC 2000, whatever it is, because there's so many now. But he's my shout out for this week.
Love it. And that's actually something you and I talked about on Saturday too. All right, now I'm going to start off with my shout-out first. My shout-out in this case is going to Mr. Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish, when he came over to the Dodgers, had the epic fail that we didn't know about at the time to the Astros. And he got booed and he got crushed in the media, and the fans just trolled him royally until they found out, of course, what the Astros ended up doing. And then, of course, a lot of the fans felt bad because they trolled him, realized that the Astros were blatantly cheating. And he had a spectacular interview just recently about all of that. I can't go into how many actually amazing, great quotes they have, so I'm going to limit it down to 2. His response in this case was, I really don't want anyone to feel guilty. The fans really wanted the team to win and cheered every day. If something like that happens at the end, it's common sense that they want to criticize the player, especially if he was acquired in a trade to help them win. Please write that, and now at this point, now that he's actually with the Padres and obviously a rival team once again, please write that if they want to do it, I would like them for not to be overly considerate of my feelings and enjoy booing as loud as they can. He went out and basically was like, I have basically you had to boo me for what ended up happening there. So I show him a lot of respect for the fact that he just kind of went out and just told them it's okay. I'm all right. I understand. My job was to succeed, and I failed, even though now we know why. My shut up, and this hurts me again as another step down in the lore that is the Yankee dynasty, goes to Mr. Aaron Boone last night, which I'm not sure if you guys ended up seeing what happened with that game. But there was an obvious mess up right there where the Yankees are down 4-1, late in the game, top of the 8th inning, bases loaded, 2 outs, Gio Urshela is up. Hits a line shot down the left field line. 1 run scores. A second run is about to score, but Aaron Judge gets thrown out at third. Why he was trying to stretch from first base to third on 2 outs is an amazing question. I have no idea. But short answer is that second run did not count because the umpiring staff believed that the tag happened before LeMahieu touched the plate. His response when he was unable to actually go in and review, part of the reason he took it so long, he said, and I'm quoting, it was too quick, and it felt like bullying, frankly. He felt that the umpiring staff was trying to bully him. Now, this is what bothers me here. He is complaining about being bullied by the umpires. This is the same guy that a couple of years ago talked about savages in the box. And I can't actually perfectly quote exactly what it was, but there was a word that started with F that was used multiple times in regards to his team being savages in the box. And I think it's indicative of what's happening with this 9-13 team, who is now has the worst batting average in all of baseball at 203, because they have gone from being savages in the box to complaining about being bullied by geriatric umpires. And that is therefore, in this case, my shut up for the week. Boone, go out and win. Frankly, you're out of a job. We're already talking about who's going to be replacing you at this point. So.
If they keep this up, Aaron Boone will not have a job by June.
Absolutely not. No, I think at this point, there's been talk of, I heard Bruce Bochy's name pop around, Sosha, Buck Showalter, if they can get him a little bit. He's already sort of an analyst for the Yes Network anyway. He knows the ins and outs of the team. It'll be interesting to see if they turned it around, but they lost to Baltimore yesterday. Their best hitter with anybody over 30 at bats is Gio Urshela, and he's batting 264. That's the best player that they've got. So anyway, I can go off on a long time tangent about that. We're not going to do that particular thing today. As always, you can find us on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and on Facebook at Spanglish Sports Den. This is the Sports Den with Mr. Obie Schottenfeld, Mr. Rob Stats, and Mr. John DeRosa. We are moving on at this point. Again, we're doing things a little out of order to get a little more time at the end for the draft. But it's time once again for the obscure sport. Now, in this particular case, we are focusing back into Finland now. We're back into Europe and focusing on pesäpallo, or basically baseball. Now, I have a video set up here right with that. So what we have here is me and okay. So we got kind of there. So we got first base, second base, third base. You see it there. Now, in this case, you have first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, left, right, shortstop, left, right, outfield. The pitcher throws the ball straight up in the air, and then at this point, it's just swung. Fast-paced, constantly moving. So we got this guy right here, Captain Tom Stand. Next to Kuoi. And a run is scored. And that right there is Finnish baseball. I think it's one of those things that I love it. I think it's so cool. I think it's such a neat concept right there. And I want to get your thoughts on it because supposedly from the other video I showed you guys, some guy came over to the United States from Finland in 1907, came back, either came up with his own rules or had a really poor memory of how baseball actually worked and came up with this version instead. So I'm going to start this off in this case here. Rob, I think we're going to start off with you. You have the regional criteria in there, oddity, obscurity, playability, watchability. Why don't you give me yours, bud?
Oddity, obscurity, I gave it like a C because it's a variation of baseball. But it's almost like the stupidity category gets like an A because like you said, it's either somebody saw baseball in America, went back to Finland, and completely forgot was just like, oh yeah, they had 3 outs. They had bases or they were drunk. And it was but it also looks like they went back to Finland and were like, oh, we don't have a diamond, a field to play on. We have it looked like they only had a rectangular shaped football field. So they had to make all these rule changes with the bases going instead of going, to your right, where you normally run down the first baseline, you're now running towards what would traditionally be third base and zigzagging. Anybody who grew up in Weehawken, where I'm from, if you ever played stickball in Wilson Schoolyard, that's how we we ran the bases backwards in Wilson Schoolyard because it was a rectangular lot. And if you played on the diamond that was in there, that's all you had. You basically had a deep left field and you had this 3-foot-high concrete monster in right field that was Wilson School, the side of the building. So it's interesting because even you throw the ball up in the air and you basically get 2 mulligans. If you don't like how you hit the ball, it's no, I don't like. I'm this is literally like playing in the schoolyard with that one kid who's no, one more swing. I didn't like that one.
That one didn't count.
Yeah, it's I didn't hit a home run. Let me get another swing. I'm what? Because there's another video that we saw where the guy hits the ball into a river. There's no wall in left field, and the left fielder literally just dives down a hill into a river and is picking the ball up, trying to throw it to his teammate, which I've done in I think it was North Arlington actually. If you've ever been out there, the stadium is on the Passaic River, and it's in a similar fashion. It's just this wide open, endless field. Like you hit a power alley, and you literally have to like relay it to two other players to get it back to the infield. So it's the playability. It's interesting. It's basically like you're not traditional pitching. It's almost like self hitting, except someone's soft tossing the ball to you. So it's playable. Like playability, give it a B. Enjoyability, like watching the video with the announcer seems very enjoyable. It's strange for me as an American who plays traditional baseball. I'm like, I'd have to readjust to this. Like I'd have to reconfigure, because even running the bases, you're not like running in a circle. It's like you go first, second, but then you're back to third. And if you get to third, you score a run on a hit, and then you can score another run when you come home. So it's definitely obscure. For that perspective, it gets an A for obscurity, because it's complete, with all the different variations of it. So is it a sport? Yeah, absolutely. Like it's got its own little thing. It's a hybrid of our version of baseball. So it's something I would definitely like to play myself if I had the opportunity. But it's interesting. It's definitely Finnish.
Obie, how about you?
All right. So right off the bat, just like Rob, I gave it an oddity of a C. Some of the things that we see in this game are things that, like, I kind of just talked about on our how to make baseball better. Like here it was, if you get a triple, you get a run, but I was like, maybe each base is a point. So like it just rang out to me. I was like, the distance to each base is further as you go from base to base, increasing sort of the value of it. So it's a lot more action-packed in baseball, but it's, odd because it's not our baseball. You can see here they don't swing laterally. They swing up and down, so they're trying to hit the ball on the ground. Because if you hit it too far, you end up hitting the foul ball. It's definitely odd from our perspective, and that's why I give it a C. But when it comes to obscurity, with A being the most obscure, I give it a D. Look, these guys are all sponsored, and not local spot. That's national sponsorship. Each one of these teams is just plastered in. So by calling it too obscure, you're really just saying, well, anything American, not American, is obscure. And this is obviously big time sport here. Look at the fans. I think when we were talking about, what was it? I'm gonna have to go back and get the name of it. But the really awesome volleyball game where we saw the people playing and we just knew that they weren't the best athletes available for the game, but just good athletes having a good time. Here they look like these are the best athletes for the, and look at that play out there at second base. So I feel like this is really not that obscure, just not American. So that's why playability comes down to a B for me, because I can't play baseball. I can barely play softball. I can handle wiffle ball. So I know I could, we could have a backyard game like this maybe, and it's still a B, but it was almost a C just because I know my ability to hit the ball. Now, watchability, this was hard for me. I feel like if I knew the sport and had a rooting interest, it could go B, possibly A. But right now, it's just like I'm having trouble watching American baseball. Why do I want to watch this other baseball right now? Also, this game is all offense. I mean, it doesn't really – maybe there is defense and stopping the ball. But, when we think baseball, we think pitcher is defense, and how good is DeGrom and Cole and Scherzer and a 7-inning no-hitter, and that's not going to happen in this game. So I'm not sure where the drama is. So I only gave it a C for watchability. It did not get on a list yet, but I'm waiting for the next hit the ball game, and then we'll start putting it on its own list so we can list it up for the future.
I think actually you probably have a point. We should probably discuss at some point whether 7-inning no-hitters are no-hitters. But that's for another week. So.
And also, if you look at it, there's only 3 bases technically, even though there's that home circle. If you when you're watching the video, the player just slides into a zone at the end, like there's no base or anything. So yeah, it is like I said, my obscurity for the A was just the variations to how it was played. But yeah, like Obie said, it's all offense. It's almost like cricket. Like you're just swinging away, and even if you hit the ball in the air and they catch it, it's not an out. You still have to throw it to the base to get the runner out. So it's a completely offensive sided style of version of baseball.
Yeah, you know what it is to me? I like how you said he was drunk. It's like when you learn the drinking game And you're like the only guy learning the game, and then you come home to your friends, hey guys, I learned the best game, and then you try to teach it to them, and then they go back with the guy who taught you, like, that's not the game we taught you, dude. You're like, oh, that's how we play here.
But yeah, I loved it. Personally, in this case, I guess maybe I'll do mine then. As far as oddity, obscurity, I gave it a B. I think it is pretty weird. I think it is, especially from the U.S. perspective. But from a playability standpoint, this thing is an A+. I love the aspect of this. I love the fact that, it's just thrown up in the air. It kind of reminded me a little bit of elementary school, where you just have that, just throw the ball up in the air to yourself, for those little pickup games. If you noticed in this one, it seemed like they were actually using a tennis ball. They weren't actually using an actual regular baseball there. So it, again, reminds me of a very elementary school street feel there. So I love that part of it. Watchability, you know what? I would give this an A-. I think it's one of those sports that could be a lot of fun. It's different. The fact that you have to run through advertising signs, I think, is a weird twist to it, and possibly a dangerous one if you're not careful in this case. But I would so be down to watch this. So, Eduardo, if you're listening to this right now, and you can maybe arrange press passes for us to Finland, we could probably try and arrange something there and maybe actually be able to cover it. We'll do a write-up. We'll do a full news piece if you're willing to basically give us press passes to at least be able to watch this firsthand. Anyway,
we need to schedule like a whole European trip.
Oh,
because we got to go to Italy. We find out when they play, and ideally, if they play at the same time as another event in Italy that we all want to go see, like we're just doing the rounds.
Casa Storico. We can do that one.
Game of Ba.
Oh yeah, catch a game of Ba.
Go catch a game of Ba. It's crazy. We'll try to we'll play. Don't lose the ball in Ba.
We should do a European tour to hit all of these sports all in the same trip.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah!
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, exactly that.
We talked a little bit about Monaco last week in one of the meetings there. By the way, Monaco Grand Prix next May. We'll see what we can do in that arena there. But John, I can't leave you out of this one. What do you think?
Oddity, I will give it an A- because, it is a little odd from an American perspective, but obscurity is a C because it is just an American sport with some weird twists. Playability, I give it an A-. It reminded me of my Little League practices back in the day, where I had the coach would just throw the ball up in the air and hit grounders to the infield. He'd occasionally throw in a pop fly to keep the outfielders on their toes. But it looks like basically making up a game of that, add in some cricket, and it definitely has the vibe of a beer league softball game for sure. Watchability, I give it a B+. There are definitely some points here that we could probably take for the how to make Major League Baseball better conversation.
Something we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, and because there's a lot of offense and a lot of action, that's what makes it a bit more watchable.
Yeah, and you don't have a pitcher shaking down a catcher and a lot of time in between plays. You just got the pitcher right there just lobbing the ball up in the air. The only stipulation is it has to be at least a meter above the guy's head. Now, one thing I did not mention in this case here, from home plate back to home plate the whole way through is 131 meters. So you're actually looking a little bit longer than what it is for a normal regulation baseball field that way. Additionally, I think supposedly if you get an inside the park home run, it counts as 2 runs instead of 1. So, again, nice little perks along the way. I'm digging that. So, all right, cool.
Wasn't it 1 run if you got to third base, and then if you made it all the way to home, it was another run?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, a triple is an automatic run, and then an additional run if you get all the way home with it. So, like I said, it's a neat idea. Again, it reminds you a lot of the rules that you had when you were a little kid. A lot of times making up the rules as you went along, whatever was necessary to suit you to get the win. All right, so moving on at this point, we are now 25 minutes into the show. As always, find us on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also at Spanglish Sports Den on Facebook. We mentioned this at the beginning. This is where we're going to spend a lot of the time that we're going to be covering today. It is time for the NFL draft. This is something that we were really going to focus a lot of attention on. This one could possibly be unique as well because it could be the first time since 1999 that 3 quarterbacks are going to go with the first 3 picks. So I want to get your thoughts on that. I want to get your ideas on whatever teams you want to go into, whatever thoughts you've got. So you know what? Let's see. Who haven't I started? Obie, I don't think I've started off with you yet.
All right. So thank you for starting with me. I'm just going to talk about quarterbacks in general because we've been told this is a quarterback league. This is a quarterback league. This is a quarterback league. So I went back to 1998. That was our boy Troy Aikman's draft, and he was 101 overall. And it wasn't a quarterback league then, right? Because he won with Emmitt Smith. And it was always the knock on the Cowboys teams was always everyone was so good, so no one was really good at all. And I just took a look at how things have changed. And here's what I discovered. Since then, the using career-weighted average approximate value from footballreference.com to sort of score who is the best quarterbacks and not by year. Since 1998, NFL GMs have picked the best quarterback in the draft right 44% of the time. And they've picked what I'm calling non-first round busts, which is a first rounder who is as good, who is not better than anyone picked in second round or later, also 44% of the time. So a lot of talk about, these guys are going to miss, whatever, and they don't even miss as much as we think, or maybe they don't hit as much as we think, depending. But it's 50-50 that you're going to pick a first rounder who should be first rounder, or you're going to pick the best quarterback first. I mean, and you get some oddities in there where Russell Wilson is now past the guy who retired. Oh my goodness. Not Drew Brees. For the Colts.
Andrew Luck.
So at this point in his career, Russell Wilson has passed Luck. If Luck doesn't retire, Luck becomes, they get the win there as picking the best quarterback. Whatever. And then you have other years where your best quarterback was picked in the second round, like Breeze or Brady. So all the first round picks go to Luck. But then the other thing I noticed that was most important to me was since that time, there's been 18 guys who get this career number up to 100. And 5 of them were picked higher than 10th overall. And that's Breeze, Favre, Brady, and Roethlisberger and Wilson. Now, there's a few that will probably catch up to that, but again, so now we're talking 5 guys in the top 10, possibly. I'm just thinking you got a 50% chance of hitting on one of these guys and probably 100% chance on Sewell. And these teams are at least the first 3 teams, depending upon what Atlanta does, possibly first 4 teams, and whatever might be offered to Cincinnati to move out, 5 quarterbacks to go first on a 50% chance. It feels like a lot of GMs are doing it as a lottery ticket, and I know you were in financial services at one point, Scott. And so if your client comes up to you and says $10 a week I'm going to put into lottery tickets and $90 a week I'm going to put into a solid plan, you go, okay, all right, we can work with that. But that's not what they're doing. They're going the other way around. They're going 90% into a lottery ticket, hoping to get Brady when they're probably Manning when they're probably not, and passing up on better things. So that's what I'm going to be watching on this draft. The guys who just let these people fall past them, be it Sewell or whomever else, and they pick quarterbacks hoping that they know they're the quarterback guru, which they only are 50% of the time.
That's interesting. That is really, I didn't know it was actually that bad. I mean, there is a lot of hit or miss involved. And obviously you see, obviously with the Jets, what's happening there. And we'll get to John definitely on that one too. But it's been a lot more. So basically it's been a lot more miss than hit when you think about the fact that it is a first round pick. You talk a lot of times about the need to necessarily take the first round, trade it down to get a couple of solid second round picks instead. But again, in this particular case, you're looking at the possibility of 3 different quarterbacks going again in the first round. And this is going to be interesting to see if Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance go, respectively, to the Jaguars, the Jets, and the 49ers. In this case, since I mentioned the Jets, I guess, John, I'll carry it over to you. Do they end up taking Zach Wilson? And do you like that pick?
I think they do take Wilson. I do not like the pick.
Okay.
I think that Trevor Lawrence is the only quarterback worth the hype in this draft. None of the rest of them are worth this pick, and a lot of people are going to lose a lot of jobs over this. Zach Wilson reminds me a lot of Josh Rosen, a cocky rich kid who came from money, played a weak schedule in college that made his stock look better than it actually was. And it's sort of like Manziel without the drinking. I don't think that Wilson will self-destruct in that regard, but with Wilson, one good year playing an independent schedule in the weirdest college football season of anybody's lifetime, that's a lot to stake your career on. Now, I understand the financial aspects of it, that they really couldn't justify picking up the option on Darnold for year 5 when he hasn't even started year 4 yet at a $20 million cap number. I understand that. So the financial rationale for it is the only reason that this move makes sense. I think that, and being a Jets fan, I have zero confidence in this being the right pick. As far as the non-Lawrence quarterbacks out there, the one I would have liked to see the Jets take is Fields. I think Fields is the best one out of the rest of this crew. But at this point, it's been made pretty clear that the Jets, for whatever reason, are in love with Zach Wilson. I think Lance goes to the Niners behind him. And but what I wanted to do, as a Jets fan, I was hoping that they would take Sewell at 2. That way you have bookends on the line, and you maybe give Darnold a chance. And if it doesn't work, you try for another quarterback or trade for one this year. As we also found out this offseason, nearly any quarterback is available for the right price if you're giving up enough draft picks and willing to eat enough of a cap hit. And the Eagles proved that with where the model now in this offseason was that if you want to trade a bad quarterback contract, you do it just like the NBA. Here, take this awful contract off of our hands, and we will give you extra draft pick sweeteners. That's basically what the Rams did to get rid of Jared Goff.
Boy,
which
that's something we should touch on too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that this move for the Jets. As I was saying, why are we chasing these quarterbacks? Get the known almost 100% pass tool in Sewell and be bad, and then be the number 1 pick, or at that point, see what Darnold had, and I think they would have been better off letting him walk if he didn't prove it with Sewell protecting him, than trying to get something for him. And it would have cost them money, because if he did do well, then they're going to sign him for 40 and never get the free 20-year contract. But yeah, you're going after a pipe dream, I feel like. And hey, I'm not saying whether he'll hit, miss, or if they'll pick somebody else they're looking at this whole time anyway, and that person will hit or miss. It feels like there's one guy I'm confident is going to be good in this draft.
Yeah, I think we talked about the Jets taking Sewell before, and for that exact reason, you have 2 bookends. They just don't have a line. It doesn't matter who you put a young quarterback there like Zach Wilson. The shoulder was an issue. Does that sound familiar? Because wasn't Sam Bradford? Darnold, yeah. I don't know, Sam Bradford hasn't been in the league for years. I don't know why that was on the brain. But yeah, Sam Darnold, he was hurt too. So yeah, great. You're gonna have a rookie quarterback with a dodgy line. You're in the same situation. Go get the lineman. And I was looking at the projections, like Obie said, it's like QB. They're talking Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, and then I think the last mock I saw had the Falcons taking the tight end from Florida. And then they were saying somebody had Chase going to Cincinnati. I'm like, no. I'm like, same reason. You just lost your franchise quarterback to an ACL injury because you didn't have good blocking. You take a lineman. And as a Miami fan, we're sitting at 6, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, we'll take Waddle. And I'm like, where's Sewell going? Because I was like, take a lineman. Like, take a lineman. Like, Obie brought this up months ago. Like, like with the aside from the guy from the Packers back in like the 80s or 90s, like when is there ever like a really big bust on a highly drafted offensive lineman? Like, Giant fans will look and say, "Oh, the guy we picked last year wasn't great." But even he's like turned it around now, because was he in Miami? I think he's in Miami, I think now, and he was decent. Like, he turned it around. Like, there's guys who bust, but it's also, you can move them around on the line too. Like, okay, maybe I'm not a prototypical left tackle for the league. Maybe I'm better on the right side. I'm pretty mobile. You can put him at a guard, or like, there's so many other spots where that's why I don't think they typically don't bust as much. And it's all skill players. Waddle and the Heisman Trophy winner was just Smith. And I'm just like, as a Miami fan, they're talking like, go get receivers. Who's going to throw him the ball? Like, Tua hasn't proven he's a consistent passer yet, and our line's just as bad as anybody else's. Like, we have no run game. We haven't had a run game since Jay Ajayi, and the weirdo who was with the Jets ran him out of town in one season. Like, Adam Gase, who's like one of the first Adam Gase casualties that we had down there. He ended up in Philly and never did. He got hurt and he was focused more on other things. But yeah, I always feel like the experts and even the GMs, they're trying to recapture that like Elway to Marino magic from the 80s. It's like, just take the best player. Like, as much as people hate the Dallas Cowboys, and I always say this, one of the reasons people hate the Dallas Cowboys is because, as crazy as Jerry Jones is from time to time, he knows how to build a team. He doesn't always draft pretty. He goes out and gets a bunch of hog mollies who are going to pave the way for his run game for Zeke Elliott or Emmitt Smith when he was there, and he builds a team. He doesn't draft pretty. Like, the last couple of years where they've struggled, why? Because he's kind of drafted pretty. Oh, let me go get a speedy receiver. Let me go get running back. Zeke Elliott was obviously one of the few exceptions where you take a running back that high and he was worth it. But just draft, you don't have to draft pretty all the time. So it'll be interesting to see where Justin Fields falls. There's talk that he could end up with the Raiders, the Patriots. I think someone's either going to trade up and go get him. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Niners if they do take Trey Lance, because that's going to be the first domino, I think, in the second round of trades. Because if they take Lance, Jimmy G's on his way out. And there's already talk that Houston's going to be trying to move Deshaun after the trade, because it's just a liability. And I think they realize that all that value he had beforehand is gone because of this whole mess. So I think there's going to be more trades later on as the draft. You'll see a bunch of trades as the draft goes on, and maybe like a record number of like big trades where, okay, we got the Niners got their quarterback, Jimmy G's going somewhere else, and the Niners will like trade back into the first round and maybe go get like a Slater, an offensive lineman from Northwestern, or somebody else, and start. That's how you get your skill position players. You trade back in, you trade away other skill position players to get those higher picks. Not just like, oh, I'm taking the first, number 2 pick because I got to take a quarterback at number 2 because I traded away my quarterback.
Yeah, so I feel like nobody watched the Super Bowl, right?
Exactly.
You did not see what happened.
The only team that apparently watched the Super Bowl was the Kansas City Chiefs, who went out and rebuilt their whole offensive line for their $1 million quarterback. Like, I followed Mahomes on Twitter, and they were like, he must be happy. And he tweeted like 20 emojis of a smiley face, was like, yes, I'm super happy.
Well, that was a rough loss last year for Kansas City. It was a painful pride. Yeah, but he said, like, nobody watched the game. Like, you had the best quarterback in the world, in the NFL. Like, the dude's a magician. And he got schooled because his offensive line fell apart. Like this, and if there's anybody that you would risk putting back there with a dodgy offensive line, it was him. And we saw what happened. And they were like, okay, we can't have that again. And they went out and got experienced guys. I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and drafted somebody if a Slater fell to them deep in the draft. Like, I'll take him. It solves another problem for 4 years. We don't have to worry about it. That's cap space.
Yeah, and there was one school of thought that I read for why the Jets didn't want to take Sewell, but this seems like a bit of overthinking, is that basically they already have Becton. So they didn't want to move either Sewell or Becton to the right side, and they didn't want to have to pay big contracts to offensive linemen at the same time. So again, thinking more about money than actually how to build a line and win football games. So I think Lance goes to the Niners at 3, But what will be very interesting to see is what Atlanta does at 4. Do they trade back? They're in a big cap crunch, and they're shopping Julio Jones around to try and get that cap hit. So I think they take Chase they take Jamar Chase at 4, and Sewell absolutely, the Bengals have to take him at 5 to give Joe Burrow some protection. But if anybody's going to screw that up, it's Mike Brown.
True indeed. Well, and let me just go. Go ahead, please.
And you were talking about the stats with first round quarterbacks before. There was a Yahoo Sports piece this morning. Here the stats actually look even worse. Between 2000 and 2015, 42 quarterbacks were taken in the first round. Of those, guess how many started at least 80 games, 5 seasons for the team that drafted them?
How many you said were drafted?
Out of 42 quarterbacks taken in the first round, how many lasted 5 seasons?
From what year?
10? 15?
No, I would say I would say less than 5.
It was 11 that started 80 games for the team that drafted them. How many of those 42 had winning records for the teams that drafted them? 16. How many made a Super Bowl? 8. How many won a Super Bowl? 4. So statistically, out of the 5 quarterbacks who are going to go in the first round, you're going to have one who's a stud. Everybody knows that's going to be Trevor, barring any kind of catastrophe, that would be Trevor Lawrence. You might have another decent one in there somewhere, and the rest are probably going to be busts. That's usually how the calculus works every year. And even going into this, I'm thinking about the 2018 draft, because the Jets keep doing this every 3-4 years, and we'll probably be doing this again another 3-4 years from now. Going into that draft, I thought that Allen was the one with the best talent. Mayfield and Darnold, I thought were hit or miss. I mean, the Jets experiment with a USC quarterback coming out early has now failed twice in a row. So let's try BYU this time, I guess. I don't know.
Well, in this case, you guys, as Jets fans on your side, you have no more excuses. If it doesn't work with Wilson, they cannot pin the blame on the quarterback anymore. And I think you and I privately talked about that one, that it's all going to be on the Jets management, and the Jets management already being a lot of times, or already a laughing stock as it is, going to be even further more so if they end up taking Wilson and failing in the process. So your team suffers, my team suffers as a Giants fan. Who knows what's going to happen there? I mean, right now for Daniel Jones, this is his hot seat year. This is his 3rd year. This is the year where he's going to have no more excuses himself. If he does not succeed here, I think the Giants, possibly in 2022, start looking for a quarterback of their own, because they're going to be able to have Saquon Barkley back. They paid Kenny Galladay a lot of money to come in. I think it's certainly possible that they're going to take Jalen Waddle. They're going to load him up with as many offensive weapons as available. So at this point, there is no more excuses for Daniel Jones. I know that the Mars are high on him. I know Gettleman's high on him. But I think this is his last year. And if he doesn't pull it out this year, and by pull it out, I mean an 8-8 record, which I think for the NFC least is a decent, and God help me for saying it, a division-winning record, even despite, what's going to happen in the draft this year. And I think in this case, if he doesn't do 8-8, I think the Giants start looking at another quarterback.
I think that to think 8-8 is going to win the NFC East requires you to believe that Dak Prescott isn't coming back. I mean, I don't know how you think 8-8 is going to win that division. Not to mention, everything we've just said about quarterbacks still means basically that Jalen Hurts could be the best quarterback from his class. And lo and behold, that could happen. I don't believe that, but the reason that could happen there too. Though I like Hurts. I think Daniel Jones can do better than 8-8. I just don't think it's going to be as horrible as it was last year.
I don't know how. I mean, Dak is supposed to be 100% healed by that point, but we don't know. So for my thought process in this particular case, there's a lot of money in this case, but but also a lot riding on now an injured running quarterback. That part concerns me. Jalen Hurts, I think, has potential, but he might still be a year out, I think. That's why I'm saying 8-8, I think, could do it next year. Who knows what's going to happen with Washington? Who knows? I think Washington is still keeping the same name that they have this year. They
Still
didn't
the football team.
Yeah, they're doing a second year of that. That's right.
Yeah. I've been for a while.
I've been calling him the Washington Redacteds.
Washington Sentinels. I actually need to get myself a Washington Sentinels jersey from the Keanu Reeves movie from 2000.
I love that movie. That is the replacement.
It really is
underrated sports movies.
There are Shane Falco jerseys you can buy out there, and I was really tempted to pick one of them up. But yeah, that's an underappreciated sports movie, and in a lot of ways based on a very accurately true story from the 1987 strike. Yep. So we should do that. We talked about doing sports movies. We never actually.
Yeah, we got to get into it. Yeah, at some point down the road, because you had so much other stuff going on. Yeah,
Lord. And after the list you gave us about all the obscure sports, I think Finnish Baseball wasn't even on that list.
No, it wasn't.
And now you got like another 50 that we're going to be setting up for in this case. But, all right. So we have got about 7-ish, maybe 8 minutes left at this point. Find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also on Facebook at Spanglish Sports Den. I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened over this past weekend. Rob and I were at the home opener for the NYCFC at Yankee Stadium. Thank you, Eduardo, for making that happen. I'm really grateful for that. So we got to talk maybe a little MLS in there. And you guys, if you have any closing thoughts, I definitely want to hear them. But all things considered, it's been about a little over a year since I've been back in a press box. I missed that. Boy, that was a lot of fun. And honestly, it was a very one-sided game, especially starting the second half.
Yeah, it was great. Like aside from the part where I got on the wrong train and ended up in the wrong part of the Bronx, because
I wasn't going to say anything to anybody.
I was replying to emails. Like I take the train in because I'm like, okay, I could check my emails and do everything, and completely not paying attention. I got on the 6 train and I'm like, right as I'm thinking, my commute's been kind of long. I see like this is the Hunts Point stop. I'm like, I'm on the wrong train and in the completely wrong part of the Bronx.
You weren't bad though. You were there.
No, I still got there pretty good. But it was a good game. Like Scott said, it was very kind of like one-sided. Cincinnati looked like the lesser team of the two. NYFC looked really good. And you could tell, like when I got there late, there were still probably over 1,000 people outside waiting for their COVID tests. You could feel as the game progressed and as everyone started to fill in, you could feel the energy and especially the volume. Like in soccer matches, the singing and the chanting is such a big part of the in-game experience. You could feel it pick up, and it was almost like the team responded to that. Like after halftime, once everyone was there, because the crowd behind the goal started cheering and singing, and they picked up they came out of the gates in the second half just on fire and like in total control. And some of the goals were amazing, like beautiful shots. Just nothing the keeper could do about it. They could have scored 6. They hit the post late in the game. That's so right. I called it I called it a pitch perfect home opener for the NYCFC. So hopefully we'll get to see more games like that and with more fanfare too. And it's also interesting, I said this to Scott, it was the third sport I've seen at Yankee Stadium. I saw the Devils Rangers Stadium Classic a few years back, obviously Yankees games, and now soccer. So I got to reach out to my boy Ira Thor and get the hookup for the Pinstripe Bowl so I can go for the Yankee Stadium Grand Slam.
But yeah, no, I'm kind of jealous on that, because I will say this, though. There was more energy for NYCFC at Yankee Stadium than Yankees at Yankee Stadium. And that's a big thing. I may actually end up doing a write-up on that pretty soon. I think for the next home game that they've got next month, I think we're going to do that as an article write-up. You will be able to – we'll make the announcement of when the articles are up and everything like that. But that's something that I would like to be able to focus a little bit of attention on. Because, yeah, like you said, even with a not anywhere near capacity crowd because of COVID – you can feel the energy. You can feel the vibrancy. There was a lot to really get excited about and feel. And that's the kind of thing that really made me want to be able to watch it with a full crowd, because that's what it is over in MLS in Europe. That's what it's like for Arsenal, for Manchester United. That's what it really is. And boy, is that addicting.
Yeah,
Go on, Joey.
I've been to a Philadelphia Union game, and in 2019, I went to a game there, and you're absolutely right that MLS is the best fan experience out of professional sports just from how involved the crowd is, and what I'd imagine is the biggest loss with the reduced crowds for COVID. But even at 30% capacity now in New York, for the NYCFC game?
I think it was 20.
Yes, 20. And I think it might be 30. I got to double check.
So 20 or 30% capacity, and you still have that energy there.
Yeah.
And that is fantastic. And that is the growth potential of Major League Soccer versus the other sports, where I know in an episode in the past you mentioned about the NBA Finals gaining on Major League Baseball, and outranking them with the NBA Finals having higher ratings than the World Series.
Yes.
I'm curious to see how that will develop over the next few years, with more people getting into soccer, and a better fan experience.
I think personally, soccer is the fourth most popular sport. I do believe it's taken over hockey. It'll be interesting.
I only say maybe because there's another sport, NASCAR, extremely popular. If you look at the numbers, NASCAR viewership, like in terms of ratings, it's up there. It's crazy high. Like people don't realize that. I remember in college we talked about it, and NASCAR's like right there on the cusp. But yeah, hockey's kind of dropping. And like I said, I've been to the Philadelphia Union Stadium too, and keep in mind, Yankee Stadium's a baseball stadium. So where me and Scott were in the press box, we're probably the farthest away from the field. Whereas when you go to like Red Bull Arena and the Union Arena down in Philly, it's designed for soccer. So that environment's even more amped up. Like you get that kind of bandbox feel. Like I remember being at the Nassau Coliseum to film on something. I walked in, I was like, oh my God, I would love to play hockey here. Like it's just, you feel like the people, you can feel them on top of you. I'm like, this is like home field advantage, where it's just when the crowd gets going and they start getting amped up, like it can become deafening. Even at old NJIT, when they had the Fleischer Center before they built their new arena, when the basketball team turned it around, we had it was the half bleachers on the only one side of the court, but it would be so loud. Like I'd be screaming stats to the person next to me because we could barely hear each other, and we were sitting shoulder to shoulder. And that's like the environment that you love to be in for a sporting event.
And that's what, unfortunately, the Yankees are not right now. So, fortunately, we got to wrap this up. I'd love to keep this going, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen. John, you were spectacular, though. I loved it. Thank you, man. You were awesome. As always, you can find this. Yeah, no, thank you, dude. Thank you. Like I said, all of this came about because you and I were just talking about some random thing on Facebook, and then now you're here. So, as always, you can find us on Facebook at Spanglish Sports Den and on Twitter, SSW Sports Den. Any final thoughts from you guys real quick? Got about 30 seconds, maybe.
I got three. I got Wells Fargo, basketball and hockey, and when you're in the upper decks there, you feel like you're falling on, so the players must feel it too. Scott, here he is, happy to cover NYCFC, hates the WFT, whatever it is. Same thing over there. And as always, I got my show, me and my Scotch and I, this week with Spanglish TV's own Candid Frank, 10 p.m. this Friday.
Awesome. So check that out here. You guys will be talking, I guess, sports and also alcohol to some degree.
Yes.
Find me tonight on Tales from the Film Set at 9 p.m. I will be discussing the Oscars and the failing that's been going on there. Stats, you're more than welcome to come on. Otherwise, I'm going to roll probably solo. I'm okay either way. We'll figure it out. So anyway, we got to wrap this up at this point. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. This show is available on 4 different continents across 35 different platforms. Possibly a few more on the horizon I can't talk about yet, but I am kind of jacked about that. So I'm going to be fired up to talk about that when the time comes. So anyway, I'm Scott Churchson on behalf of myself, Mr. Obie Spencer, Mr. Rob Stats, and special guest, Mr. John DeRosa. This is the Sports Den. Thank you as always for tuning in. You guys have been great. Take care. Have a great tomorrow.